London, 1857. Pearl Zanetti clutched her dance card with trembling fingers, its emptiness a silent rebuke. The winter ball at Thornfield Hall loomed before her like a beautiful battlefield, one she was woefully unprepared to face. Through the gilded doorway, she could see the glittering crowd of London's elite, their jewels catching the light of 1,000 candles. "Remember, Miss Zanetti," whispered her aunt, Lady Harrington, adjusting Pearl's pale blue gown with nimble fingers, "this season is your last chance. At 23, you cannot afford another year without securing a suitable match." Pearl nodded, though her heart rebelled. 3 seasons had passed since her father's disgrace and subsequent death had left her penniless, dependent on reluctant relatives. 3 seasons of whispers following her across ballrooms, of gentlemen who initially sought her hand only to withdraw when they learned of her tainted lineage. "Fortunes can be rebuilt, my dear," her aunt continued, "but only through an advantageous marriage. You must set aside your artistic fancies. No gentleman of consequence will want a wife who spends her days with paintbrushes rather than managing his household." Pearl forced a smile. "Yes, aunt. I understand my duty." But did she? In her heart, Pearl still clung to the belief that she could escape her circumstances through her art. Her watercolors, hidden in her trunk, represented freedom, the only thing truly hers after her father's banking scandal had stripped away everything else. They were her secret rebellion against the truth everyone else accepted, that a woman's worth lay solely in the match she could make. "No gentleman will overlook your father's disgrace without substantial compensation," her aunt had reminded her countless times. "Beauty fades, my dear, and yours, while adequate, is not extraordinary enough to make men forget that Edmund Zanetti died owing half of London their life savings." Pearl stepped into the ballroom, feeling exposed despite her carefully mended gown. She had added the delicate lace herself, staying awake until her fingers bled, determined to appear worthy of respect if nothing else. Lord and Lady Pembroke's annual winter ball marked the official beginning of the season. Failure to secure attention tonight would signal disaster for her prospects. Pearl positioned herself near a marble column, both visible enough to be noticed yet protected from immediate scrutiny. She observed the dance floor, where débutantes floated like delicate blossoms in the arms of eligible bachelors. Their laughter rose above the orchestra, carefree and assured. How different their worlds from hers. They had unlearned, as she had, that security was an illusion that could vanish overnight. "Miss Zanetti, you've positioned yourself like a chess piece." The deep voice startled her. Strategic, yet ultimately vulnerable. Pearl turned to find herself looking into eyes so dark they appeared almost black in the candlelight. The gentleman before her was tall, his evening clothes impeccably tailored to broad shoulders. His features were striking rather than handsome, high cheekbones, a straight nose, and lips curved in subtle amusement. He bowed. "Count Gabriel Stanton, at your service." Pearl cursed, her practiced movement hiding her surprise. "A count? Addressing her? You have the advantage of me, sir." "Do I?" His accent held traces of something foreign beneath cultured English tones. "I suspect few have any advantage over you, Miss Zanetti, despite appearances." She stiffened. "You know my name. I make it my business to know interesting people." His gaze traveled over her face with unsettling intensity. "May I claim your next dance?" Pearl hesitated. Count Stanton was unknown to her, yet he obviously knew of her. Was he merely curious about the disgraced banker's daughter? Or worse, did he seek to court scandal? Before she could decide, he took her dance card, noting the emptiness with a raised eyebrow. Without asking permission, he wrote his name in every blank space. "Sir." "That is most improper, is it?" He handed the card back. I've simply saved you the tedium of pretending to be selective, and myself the inconvenience of watching others dance with you. You cannot possibly. The first waltz begins. Shall we? He extended his hand. Pearl knew she should refuse. To dance every dance with one gentleman was tantamount to declaring an understanding. Yet the alternative, standing alone while whispers circulated, seemed worse. With a deep breath, she placed her gloved hand in his. The moment they stepped onto the floor, Pearl felt the weight of every gaze. Lady Harrington's eyes widened in shock. The Dowager Countess of Merryweather lifted her lorgnette for a better view. Even the young débutantes paused in their flirtations to stare. "You've created quite a spectacle," Pearl murmured as they moved through the opening steps. "No, Miss Zanetti. We have created one together." His hand at her waist was proper yet somehow intimate. "Tell me, do you always allow others to define your worth?" Pearl missed a step, quickly recovering. "I beg your pardon." "Your eyes betray you. You watch the room as though awaiting judgment." His voice lowered. "Yet you hold yourself like someone who once knew her own value. You presume much from a simple dance, Count Stanton." "Gabriel," he corrected. "And I presume nothing. I observe. Your gown, exquisite needlework on the lace. Your own, I think. Your hands bear the subtle marks of someone who creates. An artist, perhaps." Pearl felt exposed, vulnerable. "My personal pursuits are hardly. Everything about you speaks of resilience, Miss Zanetti. Yet you stand in corners, accepting society's verdict." The music swelled as he guided her through a turn. His dancing was flawless, making her feel weightless despite her discomfort with his observations. "My circumstances are not of my choosing," she finally said. "Few circumstances are. Our responses, however, remain our own." As the dance ended, he returned her to the edge of the floor but didn't release her hand. "Until our next dance," he said, bringing her fingers briefly to his lips. Throughout the evening, true to his claim, Count Stanton returned for every dance. Between sets, he brought her punch, introduced her to foreign dignitaries, and kept her firmly in the center of attention. Pearl felt herself transformed from social outcast to object of fascination simply through his focused attention. During their third dance, she gathered her courage. "Why have you singled me out, Count Stanton? I have nothing to recommend me." His expression darkened momentarily. "Perhaps I recognize something in you, Miss Zanetti. A spirit that refuses to be crushed, despite society's best efforts. You speak as though you know of such things. Don't we all carry our private battles?" His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Some scars are visible, others hidden beneath fine clothing and proper manners." As midnight approached, Lady Harrington intercepted them, her expression a mixture of concern and calculation. "Count Stanton, you do my niece great honor with your attentions." "The honor is mine, Lady Harrington." His smile revealed nothing of his thoughts. "Perhaps you might call upon us tomorrow? For tea?" Her aunt's transparent maneuvering made Pearl's cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I look forward to it." He bowed, then turned to Pearl. "Until tomorrow, Miss Zanetti." After he departed, the ballroom buzzed with speculation. Pearl's dance card, filled with a single name, became an object of fascination. Ladies who had previously avoided her now sought introductions. Gentlemen who had overlooked her suddenly discovered her existence. "Who is he?" Pearl asked her aunt as their carriage rolled toward home. "What do you know of him?" Lady Harrington adjusted her shawl. "Very little. He arrived in London 3 months ago. Purchased a house in Mayfair. rumored to have extensive holdings on the continent. Some whisper his of mixed heritage, Italian mother, perhaps, but his wealth silences most objections. And his interest in me. Her aunt's expression softened slightly. Do not question Providence, my dear. A count. With his fortune, your father's disgrace might finally be overlooked. But Pearl did question it. As she lay in bed that night, she replayed every moment, every word. Count Stanton, Gabriel, had seen through her careful facade to the person beneath. Rather than finding her wanting, he had seemed intrigued. It was unsettling yet thrilling, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one step could lead to either flight or destruction. The next morning brought a delivery, a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, Pearl found an exquisite wooden box of artist's watercolors, the finest she had ever seen, and a note. For the woman who creates beauty even when surrounded by ugliness. Pearl stared at the gift, her heart racing. How had he known? She had never spoken of her painting to anyone in society. The colors gleamed in the morning light, rich indigos, scarlets, and golds that she could never have afforded. His promised call came promptly at 4. Lady Harrington received him in the drawing-room, where Pearl sat with unnaturally perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Count Stanton, she acknowledged when they were finally left relatively alone, her aunt maintaining a discreet distance across the room. Your gift was most unexpected. Did it please you? He settled into the chair opposite her, his posture relaxed yet commanding. It was presumptuous. Pearl met his gaze directly. How did you know of my painting? His smile deepened. Your fingertips. Faint traces of pigment that soap doesn't quite remove. The way you studied the frescoes on the ballroom ceiling when you thought no one was watching. You observed closely for a recent acquaintance. I've been observing you longer than you realize, Miss Zanetti. Pearl set her teacup down carefully. That statement requires explanation, sir. Gabriel leaned forward. 3 months ago, at the Royal Academy exhibition. A small watercolor of the Thames at dawn. The artist's name was simply PZ. I purchased it immediately. Pearl's breath caught. She had submitted the painting anonymously, desperate for funds yet unable to bear having her name, and its associations, attached to her work. You're mistaken, she whispered, though they both knew it was a lie. I recognize the hand that created that painting. The same hand I held last night. His eyes held hers. The same spirit that refuses to surrender, despite circumstances. For weeks thereafter, Count Stanton's attentions continued with unwavering consistency. He called at Lady Harrington's house regularly. He appeared at every social event Pearl attended. He sent books of poetry, exotic teas, and once, daringly, a portfolio of blank watercolor paper. Society watched with avid interest. Speculation ran rampant about his intentions. Some wagered he was merely toying with the disgraced banker's daughter. Others insisted a formal announcement was imminent. Pearl found herself suspended between hope and suspicion. Gabriel was unlike anyone she had ever known, cultured, perceptive, and seemingly unconcerned with social conventions. Yet his very interest made her wary. Men of his standing did not seriously pursue penniless young women with scandalized names. You still don't trust me, he observed one afternoon as they walked in Hyde Park, her aunt trailing at a discreet distance. After 6 weeks of acquaintance. I've learned that appearances can be deceiving. Pearl tightened her grip on her parasol. Men of your position rarely seek genuine attachment to women of my circumstances. And what is my position, exactly? A hint of challenge colored his voice. Wealthy. Titled. Unencumbered by scandal or debt. How confident you seem of my circumstances." His jaw tightened. "Perhaps I have my own ghosts, Miss Zanetti. My own debts to pay." Before she could question him further, they were interrupted by the Marchioness of Caldwell, a formidable dowager whose approval could make or break reputations. "Count Stanton." The Marchioness stopped her carriage. "I've been hoping to encounter you. Lady Pembroke's musical is this Thursday evening. I expect to see you there." Her gaze flicked dismissively over Pearl. "Alone, preferably. There are several young ladies of impeccable lineage I should like to introduce you to." Pearl felt her face flame with humiliation. The message was clear: society had tolerated Gabriel's flirtation with her as a passing amusement, but it was time for him to direct his serious attentions elsewhere. To her surprise, Gabriel's expression hardened. "How unfortunate, Lady Caldwell. Miss Zanetti and I already have plans for Thursday evening." The Marchioness's eyebrows rose. "Indeed? Well, I'm certain Miss Zanetti wouldn't wish to deprive you of important social connections. Would you, my dear?" Pearl swallowed her pride. "Of course not, my lady. Count Stanton should certainly—" "Miss Zanetti speaks from generosity," Gabriel interrupted, "but I've already given my word. Another time, perhaps." As the Marchioness drove away, clearly displeased, Pearl turned to him. "You shouldn't have done that. Her goodwill is valuable. More valuable than my integrity." He offered his arm again. "I made my choice, Pearl. I wish others would accept it as readily as I have." It was the first time he had used her Christian name. The intimacy of it, spoken in his deep voice, sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the spring breeze. That Thursday, rather than attending Lady Pembroke's musicale, Gabriel took Pearl to the Royal Academy. After hours, by special arrangement, they stood alone before her painting of the Thames, now prominently displayed among works by established artists. "I acquired it anonymously," he explained, "then donated it to the Academy with the stipulation it be exhibited." The curator was reluctant until he actually saw it. Pearl stared at her work through tears. "Why would you do this?" "Because talent should be recognized regardless of the artist's name or circumstances." He turned to face her. "And because I recognized in your painting what I later saw in you, extraordinary strength disguised as ordinary propriety." He took her hands in his. "I came to London seeking the artist who created this piece, determined to commission more. Finding you in society, watching you endure its cruelties with such dignity, I realized the woman was even more remarkable than her art." Pearl withdrew her hands. "If this is pity, it has never been pity." His voice was fierce. "It is recognition. I see you, Pearl Zanetti. Not your father's disgrace or your reduced circumstances. You." For one breathless moment, she allowed herself to believe him. Then reality reasserted itself. "Even if that's true, it changes nothing. Society will never accept. Society accepted me readily enough, despite my own secrets." He laughed without humor. "They see my title and my wealth. They never question how I acquired either." "What do you mean?" Gabriel walked to the window, his profile sharp against the fading light. "My father was the Count of Stanton, yes. But he lost everything: lands, fortune, respect, through gambling and poor investments. When he died, I inherited nothing but a title and mountains of debt." He turned back to her. "I left England at 19. Traveled to Italy, to my mother's family. Learned to paint, to restore art. Built a business finding lost masterpieces for collectors who asked no questions about provenance. Within 10 years, I had rebuilt my fortune, not always through means society would approve. Pearl stared at him. Why tell me this? Because I understand what it means to reinvent yourself from nothing. He approached her slowly. And because I won't build a future on lies, not with you. His honesty staggered her. For 2 years, Pearl had lived behind a careful mask, accepting that no one would see beyond her father's sins. Now Gabriel offered something she'd thought forever lost, understanding without judgment. We are more alike than different, he said softly. Both judged for circumstances beyond our control. Both fighting to create our own futures. When he kissed her, it felt like permission to finally breathe after years of carefully measured breaths. Their courtship progressed rapidly after that night. Gabriel called formally upon Lady Harrington to request permission to court Pearl. Though initially skeptical of his intentions, her aunt could hardly refuse a titled, wealthy suitor, especially one who seemed genuinely attached to her difficult-to-place niece. As spring blossomed into summer, Pearl allowed herself to believe in the possibility of happiness. Gabriel encouraged her painting, arranging for her work to be exhibited under her full name. He spoke of traveling to Italy together, of the light in Venice that would inspire her art. Then came the letter that shattered everything. Pearl found it one morning among her correspondence, unsigned, written in a jagged hand. Ask your Count where his fortune truly came from. Ask about Lucrezia Visconti and her collection. Ask why he really left Italy. He rebuilt his fortune on blood money and theft. Is that the man you would marry? Her hands trembled as she read the accusations. She told herself they were lies, the work of a jealous rival or someone who resented Gabriel's attention to her. Yet doubt, once planted, grew quickly. What did she truly know of his past? Of the decade he spent abroad? He had admitted his methods weren't always proper. When Gabriel called that afternoon, Pearl was distant, distracted. He noticed immediately. Something troubles you, he said as they sat in Lady Harrington's garden. Will you not share it with me? Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. His face darkened as he read it, jaw tightening, a muscle pulsing in his cheek. These are serious accusations, Pearl said when he remained silent. Are they true? Parts. His voice was flat. Twisted to cause maximum damage, but based in truth. Pearl felt her heart constrict. Which parts? Lucrezia Visconti was my patron in Florence. A wealthy widow who collected art. She died suddenly. There were rumors I had taken advantage of her generosity. That her final bequest to me was coerced. And was it? His eyes met hers, pained but unflinching. No. She left me her collection because I had spent years authenticating it, protecting her from frauds. She had no family. We were close. How close? The question escaped before Pearl could stop it. Gabriel stood, pacing the garden path. She was 30 years my senior, Pearl. A mentor. Nothing more. But society always assumes the worst. As they did with me, Pearl whispered. Yes. He knelt before her chair. The accusations forced me to leave Italy. I sold her collection, legally, ethically, and used the proceeds to rebuild what my father had lost. There was no theft, no blood money. Only the usual viciousness of gossip. Pearl wanted desperately to believe him. Yet the parallels to her own situation gave her pause. How easily she had accepted society's judgment of her father, a man who had always shown her nothing but love. How readily she had internalized the belief that she was somehow tainted by association. I need time, she said finally. To think. Gabriel's face was a study in controlled pain. I understand. He rose, formal again. When you've reached your conclusion about my character, you know where to find me. For days afterward, Pearl wrestled with doubt. She had begun to build dreams upon Gabriel's promises, dreams of respect, of love, of a life where her art and her heart could flourish equally. Now those dreams seemed as fragile as soap bubbles, beautiful but insubstantial. Lady Harrington, sensing something amiss, pressed for details. When Pearl reluctantly shared the letter's contents, her aunt was surprisingly thoughtful. Men of means always attract rumors, she said. The question is not whether Count Stanton has a past, all men do, but whether he has been honest with you about it. He admitted to parts of it, Pearl replied. But how can I know if he's told me everything? Her aunt's gaze was surprisingly gentle. My dear, if you seek a man without secrets or mistakes, you'll spend your life alone. The real question is whether you love him enough to accept his past as he has accepted yours. The words resonated deeply. Gabriel had never once judged her for her father's actions. He had seen value in her when others saw only scandal. He had recognized her talent when she herself had almost abandoned it. With sudden clarity, Pearl recognized her true fear, not that Gabriel was unworthy of her trust, but that happiness itself might be snatched away if she dared to claim it. She had protected herself from disappointment by expecting the worst, believing deep down that love and respect were luxuries she no longer deserved. That evening, without informing her aunt, Pearl took their only servant and visited Gabriel's Mayfair home. It was a scandalous action that would have destroyed her reputation completely had it been discovered. She no longer cared. He received her in his study, surrounded by books and art. His face showed surprise, then careful neutrality. I owe you an apology, Pearl said without preamble. I allowed an anonymous letter to make me doubt what I already knew to be true. Gabriel remained standing behind his desk. And what is that? That you are a man who understands what it means to be judged unfairly. Who built something meaningful from ruins. She stepped closer. A man who saw value in me when I had forgotten my own worth. His expression softened. Pearl, I've spent 2 years believing my father's mistakes defined my future, she continued. Accepting that I deserved less because of his actions. You showed me the lie in that thinking. Her voice strengthened. I won't make the same mistake with you. Gabriel moved around the desk, taking her hands in his. I should have told you everything from the beginning. About Lucrezia. About the rumors that followed me from Italy. As I should have shown you my paintings from the start, rather than hiding my talents as though they were shameful. Pearl smiled through tears. Perhaps we both have lessons to learn about trust. He drew her closer. Then let us learn them together. 2 weeks later, the Morning Post announced the engagement of Count Gabriel Stanton to Miss Pearl Zanetti. Society buzzed with speculation and surprise. The disgraced banker's daughter and the mysterious foreign count, it was a match few had predicted would end in matrimony. The wedding was small but elegant, held in the chapel at Thornfield Hall. Pearl wore a gown of ivory silk adorned with lace she had designed herself. Around her neck hung a pendant containing a miniature copy of her Thames painting, Gabriel's wedding gift to her. As they departed for their wedding journey to Venice, Pearl caught sight of her reflection in the carriage window. She barely recognized the confident woman who gazed back at her. Gone was the shadow of shame that had dimmed her eyes for so long. In its place was something she had thought forever lost, hope. What are you thinking? Gabriel asked, taking her hand. Pearl smiled at her husband. That sometimes our greatest mistakes lead us to our greatest joys. Had my father not lost everything, had you not been forced to rebuild your life, we might never have recognized each other. 2 survivors, he agreed, finding strength in each other. No, Pearl corrected gently. Two artists, creating something beautiful from what others might call ruins. As the carriage rolled toward Dover and the waiting ship, Pearl watched England recede behind them. Ahead lay Venice, with its legendary light and endless possibilities. But more importantly, ahead lay a future of her own making, one where her worth was no longer determined by her past or by society's judgment, but by the truth she and Gabriel had discovered together, that love, like art, found its greatest expression not in perfection, but in the authentic rendering of a human heart.